Hello, my name is Fred Amrine, and welcome to EST Plus, the college funding solution. And today we're going to be talking about the college financial aid changes that we're facing in 2016 and 2017. Just a little background on myself. My name is Fred Amrine. I'm an expert in the whole college financial picture. So we don't sell any financial products. I'm the only financial advisor. And what makes me unique is I cover from how to save for college all the way to student loan repayment and loan forgiveness. We're really excited about our new tool called EST Plus. We were just at at a national conference headed by Michael Kitches with XY Planning at the conference there, and we were one of the FinTech finalists. So, and we also have a book called Financial Aid Beyond: Secrets of College Affordability. And I'm also a board member MCAG, National College Advocacy Group, and I'd highly recommend if you're in the college business that you become a member. It's a great organization, brings the financial planning piece together with the academics. So it's a really great organization, some great people in it. And I've been quoted in various national media publications. So just going to go over the agenda here. The new term is called Early FAFSA, or also prior was also named. We're going to cover that, what's going on there, what you need to be aware of. I think the big issue that we're going to face this year is how's DRT going to impact this? It's going to be a big change for a lot of people and how the schools operate with this. Also want to address a quick note on the SAT changes. We're seeing that as an option or something that people need to be aware of and expectations. Also, because of DRT and if there's changes in your financial positioning, how the appeal process will need to work. And then I have a few ideas or options I think that are going to happen. And these are just, looking into the future as a result of some of these changes that will happen this year. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what prior is. So it goes effective 10/1 of this year, so this weekend actually. And typically when there's big changes in this, I'm not a big person. I've seen a few articles, get your fast in as soon as you can. We typically don't use the rush there. I mean, if you get it in with the first week or two, I think that's going to be good enough. But typically there's bugs or issues that we'll be seeing, especially with this change being so great. I would probably tell you to delay it until probably mid-October, or at least the first week. There is a new name they're calling it instead of prior. You also hear the term Early FAFSA. And the biggest difference is it's going to use the prior year taxes. So everyone that has submitted their taxes in 2015, that will be able to use, and you'll be able to use the DRT system, the data retrieval tool, to bring in your income numbers for both the student and the parent, which is probably the most confusing when you read the instructions of what line items you need to bring in and things like that. So that is a big improvement in the process and will probably take a lot of stress and confusion out of the process. But you have to also remember that when you look at the award letter process, it will actually be 18 months, almost 18 months old when they're actually giving you award letter. So it will utilize the IRS system a lot better, and the link there. We're going to address the few of the issues that you may face with DRT that may not work later in the presentation. But the whole goal for the Department of Ed and the colleges was to simplify the process. I think there's some advantages it will bring in. There's also some other things that it will create more confusion or more work for people in the award letter in the financial aid offices when you have all these changes and appeals. The biggest change for me is how much earlier it's moved up. So for the high school guidance counselors and even the financial planners that are on the call here today, you really need to look at how much further in advance people have to start looking at these numbers. What we always have said is the tax years and school years don't match up. So as an example here, we didn't put any years in, but when you're a senior, your time frame is already gone. And if you're a junior, the tax year you're in is being used. So, you really have to start your planning by the first semester of their sophomore year, that tax year. So any sophomore parents and below or your clients, they have to make any financial decisions before 12/31 of this year. Freshman year also is a good year to look at it. You have a little more time to do those changes, especially if you have capital gains or things you're trying to take advantage of. But again, it starts a lot earlier. It's kind of disconnected in some senses for me, for the younger families, where it's so much further in advance, where For the junior parents, it kind of makes more sense in the sense that you're going to have the tax year that you are looking at. It's already in hand. So there's advantages on both ends and some disadvantages on both ends. So I think you just need to be aware of how much earlier it is, especially for your high school guidance counselors. You need to make sure your parents are aware of this big change. And if you have a financial aid night, you need to move that forward. So what are the changes here that I'm seeing? We've actually inverted the process versus prior years. What DRT was to do was really turn on a verification flag for the colleges that says that we're matching, that the data that you're in, and then the IRS system matches what you've submitted as a FAFSA form. So it was a verification process. And in the past, you typically did not have your taxes completed. It hadn't processed through the IRS system to do the DRT tool, which would then turn the verification flag on for the schools once you've committed. So that typically was in the April, May, June timeframe when that was done. Now you'll be able to turn that data retrieval tool flag on when you do the applications. So that could be as early as October because we're using tax information that's already been submitted and processed through the IRS. Again, I think it will simplify the confusion in the income part of the FAFSA form. That can be overwhelming for some parents as you go through this. But I think it will make it better in that sense. What is also different in comparison to maybe last year or prior years is the way we would have approached it is that we have done an early estimate before taxes were done, and that would be sometime in January. Then we would update the FAFSA form once your taxes were done sometime in February, hopefully before March 1st. And then once the tax is processed through the IRS system, we would then turn the DRT flag on. Now this will be totally inverted for most people in the sense that you're going to want to turn on the DRT flag and not put in an estimate at all. And then if there's adjustments, you will then go back and have the schools make the adjustments to what they would prefer or consider professional judgment. So the colleges will need to have that DRT flag on for verification. It is not applicable in most cases to submit a FAFSA just without the DRT flag. There may be a few unique situations where that will be required, but in most cases, you want to turn on the DRT flag first, and then if there's adjustments, you need to go back to each of the schools and ask them to look into the adjustments that you're going to need. As that happens, you're also going to see the appeal process will need to change, and adjustments will need to be done by the schools. So if you take off or overwrite your DRT flag, that's going to take that off the system, and the schools won't be able to make sure the verification is good because they're going to need that for their for the audit for the Department of Ed. So that's an important part. So if you do have adjustments, please use the DRT system first. There's going to be a few people where that's not available to them. So if you have 2015 and you have amended tax return, the DRT system will not be available. Tax filers that are on extension. So some people maybe have extensions that will typically go up to October 15th. If they are on extension, it will not have been processed through the IRS system. And if they've just recently filed, so maybe they filed their taxes, they're on extension, and maybe they did it this week, it may not be available through the IRS system for another 2 or 3 weeks. So that may be also a problem. Just so these are issues I want you to be aware of as you go through it, and their clients may have that. It needs to match the tax, the 1040 or 1040A, 1040 EZ exactly. So if they have a middle initial, if they have ST versus street, it has to match whatever that top block of their tax form exactly as it's stated there, which could be different from what they have actually typed into the FAFSA form when you get that box in the DRT. Some complicated form or tax returns won't process through. So that will be an issue for maybe your higher net worth individuals that have more complicated tax returns. And if you have that situation where there's one that I overlooked here. Also, if you are on a payment plan or you have taxes outstanding, the DRT system will also not be available. So that's one other option that's there. If that is the case, what you're going to have to do is submit the estimate using your current tax form, the most recent 2015 taxes, and submit that manually without using DRT. And then you're going to have to request the tax transcript from the IRS. and then you'll have to send that to each of the schools you're applying. That will turn on the flag for them, or at least they'll have the backup that they need. So if your clients or your parents are coming in and say it's not working for me, it could be a variety of reasons. Sometimes there's Social Security issues that it's not matching up. Typically that's handled now through the FSA, but every once in a while you'll have situations where it just doesn't match up, and this is the process you'll need to do if it doesn't work for anybody. So what are the issues that you may face with DRT and prior? As I said earlier, you're going to have to do the DRT first, and then if you have changes in your financial position, such as a divorce or a separation, you'll need to go back to the schools and submit a letter explaining your situation, and only the schools can make the adjustments to the DRT flag fields. So this is where we talked about earlier about not just submitting a estimate. The schools are going to really need that DRT flagged on, and then you're going to need to write a short letter explaining the situation that you have, a divorce situation or a separation, or maybe you've downsized and gotten laid off, or an income change, or maybe possibly a death also could be an issue. So they're the most common issues that you'll want to raise the flag to, and then you're going to need to go in prepared for that. So you may need to have a CPA or somebody explain the changes. Again, here's where they will probably need some verification for the current year and showing the changes, and then breaking out the numbers. There'll also be other issues on things like exemptions or family size or other income items. So maybe you're decided to your 2015 you had income and you've gotten downsized, and you also had money going into a 401k at work. That could be a significant issue because the income change there plus your deferred compensation in the years you're applying for financial aid get added back in as income, and depending on what your income level is, that could be up to 45 to 50% of the number, 49% of the number based on your income level. So that can be a significant number on your EFC, especially if you have multiple children in school. So really, we get into more and more details, you peel back the onion here, but it's an important part to understand the numbers. If you've had changes, make sure you detail them, and make sure the letters are short, 1 or 2 sentences with the numbers associated with it. It makes it easier for the financial aid director to understand what you're trying to communicate to them in those situations. So again, the appeal process will be a little bit different this year. In the past, we've appealed based on changes once we receive the award letters. I think the appeals this year will start earlier. You're going to need, as we said earlier, turn the DRT flag on, but send them the differences of what's changed as soon as you can. So as an example, if we had a layoff, we want to show that our income went from X to Y. Again, this is a big part of the change, as in the past we talked about a few minutes ago. The verification process used to be on the front end. Now it will actually be on the front end. So in the past prior years, it was on the back end after all the information processed. The advantage now to prior is it will happen on the front end, or can happen on the front end. I'm going to recommend that you do it that way versus if you do an estimate and you don't communicate to the schools are unsure if that's going to be your final number. So it's an important part that you turn on that DRT flag. As a result, though, as you do your appeals on the front end, your EFC numbers, depending on what each school is going to recognize, could be different. So in the past, the federal EFC number was the same at every school, and your typically appeal process would happen after your award letter came and explained the situation. Now what can happen is a school, it could be very different from school to school, in the sense is your DRT system or EFC, driven from the FAFSA with DRT flags on, is one number, and then you write your appeal. Some schools will recognize a portion of it, all of it, whatever they're going to make adjust. So you may have different federal EFC numbers at different schools during the application process, which is also very different than prior years. As I said earlier, I would recommend a short introduction, paragraph of what's going on, and then detail each of the differences. So if I had a job loss and now we're making $40,000 to $30,000 less a year, plus I'm not contributing to my deferred compensation 401k, and that was $5,000 a year. I mean, that could be a significant change in your EFC that was shown on your 2015 taxes, as this would be the case this year. So again, having that detail, break them out in 1 or 2 sentences with a number will make it much more easier for the financial aid director versus you writing something long long and detailed, explaining everything and rambling. It's better to keep it short and sweet. Remember the reader as you go through the process. Also, there's some reasons why to submit the FAFSA form and using DRT. For me, we've heard a few different things from different colleges that this year we'll have some changes. I don't know if it's going to be as significant this year as it may be for next year, but this tells the school that you've submitted and you're done. So in the past, your high net worth individuals may not have submitted a FAFSA for a variety of reasons. For me, I think this year is even more impelling for them to submit it, because it's going to tell them that I'm ready to get an award letter. Some schools are going to be ready to do that earlier than others. Some we've heard as early as November, which will also impact the early decision process. But some schools will be ready to do that. When you submit your application, and again, we had a much more structured financial aid process due to the tax return situation, and now you turn and submit your FAFSA with DRT, it basically tells the school, I've submitted my information, you have it, I'm ready, please make your decision and submit my admissions and award letter. So that will turn it on, where if you don't submit your FAFSA form, you may not get an award letter because they don't know if you're going to submit one or not. So they'll probably withhold that until they feel comfortable that that process will be done. So again, I would recommend you submitting your FAFSA form. And there's some other reasons we're talking in a few seconds. It turns on the school's flag that says, okay, we have their information, we can go forward, and everything's in place. Versus if we don't, it may delay, the people that feel they're not going to qualify, they don't submit it, it may delay the award letters because the schools just don't know when they're going to, they're actually going to wait for the FAFSA deadline to pass before they'll submit. So again, there's a lot of peer pressure as you go through this process, and I just feel it's an important part that's changing. And also for me, for your high net worth individuals, it shows the schools you have the ability to pay, which is an important part in their admission process. And again, you may receive the admission and award letter sooner by doing this. Also, by submitting the FAFSA form, I think it really helps you because it qualifies you for the Stafford loans. And if your child's going to need postgraduate studies or your clients, it's an important part for the structuring the debt. As I see this, when you look at the rate differential between the grad plus loans and the undergraduate debt, and if you know you're going to have to take on that debt, you may be better off deferring your resources and offsetting the graduate debt and take on the student loans on the undergraduate side, because the difference is, when you look at the rates, is close to 5% when you add in the fees. So again, I would highly recommend, no matter where you are in the process, that you do that. Also, it helps in the verification process. Get a few messages here. Significant changes do not. We'll handle the questions at the end here. It also tells the schools the verification is complete, so that they can then just move on for them. It just makes it a more efficient process for the schools also. So that kind of completes where we are on the DRT. I just want to address a few other issues that we're seeing when we start looking at cost and different things. For the new SAT test scores, people have taken it in May and in March. There's a scaling that has to happen, or there's a curve that was added due to the consistency. The colleges do not change their guidelines and scholarships until the upcoming school cohort is developed, until everyone, they know what they received, who's coming, and that's also going to cause a problem for next year depending on the turnaround time. But we're still using the old SAT scores, and there's a conversion you have to look at. So some schools are communicating this to the parents, some are not. Some are just going to make the adjustment based on what submission they receive. I would highly recommend you communicate that to your clients and parents, because it's going to maybe raise their expectations. Again, it will vary test score to test score, but say we're going to get the guideline is at 1,200 to get into the scholarship or into this college, and we've taken the test and we scored a 1,230 or 1,240. Well, that may convert to only like 1,190 or 1,180. And they're expecting that to get in or get the scholarship. So I would make sure that that's communicated. We just wrote a blog article about that. I would recommend you go out to EST Plus and look at that conversion. But I think that's an important part. And as far as managing your clients and your parents' expectations, as I said, most of the schools that we talk to are not really explaining that. They're not changing the data because they don't have the cohort, the sampling to do that. So some are just going to accept it and they'll convert it behind the scenes for you. and that gets under the expectations, which again then will manage or cause a problem for both admissions and scholarship submissions. Here's what we're looking at for 2000 and this year and going forward. I don't think there will be many changes. Some schools have done a good job in preparation and are looking to make some significant changes, such as award letters as early as November, which again will change the early decision. But also, I think we're seeing a lot of schools, they're going to wait and see what's going on there, which will have an impact on their processes and making it a little bit more confusing. I think what I think is going to be more difficult will be next year's class. I mean, this 2016, 2017 class already saw enough. They're seeing the change in the SAT and the change to prior. I think in 2017, 2018, we're going to see how the schools react or the colleges react to that. So we're going to have the SAT score updates of that happening. We're going to see how the schools reacted to prior with the award letters. Again, there's some psychological advantage supposedly to get the award letters to the students as early as possible. Many of the schools aren't prepared to do that this year, but next year, if they see yield issues, I can see this all getting compressed into next year much more earlier. So it just is a warning in what I'm seeing and hearing. I think, as I said, the award letter, the advantage to get the award letter to the student first is a major advantage from what I've been told. And I think it'll have a significant impact on early decision. So early decision, if we look at it today, typically does not give award letters until mid-December, late December. Under the new process, if now you have your FAFSA in and your application in, you could receive admissions and award letters in November. Some schools will be prepared to do that. So now you're going to have schools or numbers to compare against your more competitive schools that use that early decision process, which I think will be a change. I don't know if it's going to be that much this year, but next year could be significant. And then the reaction to MELT. It'll be interesting to see how the schools do that. I think we're seeing more and more. I don't know what's going to happen there. I could see some increases in deposits, so the MELT issue will be declined a little bit or reduced, but we can see a significant change there. Also, another issue is that we're going to have a much longer time to negotiate as yield goes through and parents and students go through this process. So there's a few big changes that are going to happen in 16. It'll be interesting in 17, 18. I think it's going to be the more confusing year personally because it's more of a status quo this year, and they'll react next year much more abruptly, and we won't know what's going to happen based on their experiences. So they're the one or two things I think we're going to be seeing or looking into as we go forward. Just want to give you a quick update on EST Plus. Some of you may be aware. I thank you for reading our newsletter. Most of you, this is only for the financial advisors and for the college guidance counselors and college planners, this webinar. But just as an FYI for you, we have the most comprehensive solution in the business, I think. Our data, we just did a manual update of all the schools. We visited all over 1,700 schools to make sure our cost data was the best it could be. We are selected as a FinTech finalist. And I really think we help parents make better college decisions. With our award letter comparison, you can see, look at that value proposition. We're seeing more and more situations where, it's gotten so expensive that parents can utilize their resources and try to envision their life or their child's life at age 25. I think it's becoming more and more important. How do I use my resources to educate my child so they're employable at 20, 25, whatever they're going to need from an education standpoint, and spend their money the best way. It allows you to see the side-by-side comparisons on actual numbers, not just on a projected basis. So you're going to key in your actual award letters. And then we're really excited, probably in the next 2 weeks, we'll have the in-college tool, which will do all the loan repayment options. So again, we're on a path to give a complete solution, probably by sometime early 17, to have also the loan repayment. The in-college tool actually is very interesting. It does all 8 loan repayment options and builds a personal P&L for the student. So that helps the students that are transferring. We have a transfer rate close to 30-35% right now, but it'll do all that work for those type of students. So we're really excited about what we can deliver and bring to this problem of student debt. As you know, we have a few different webinars coming up. You're on our newsletter list. Our whole goal here is to focus on the outcome and get students out. They graduate on time with manageable debt. And we're seeing all this debt issues, and our process hopefully will help parents and students make better college financial decisions. that concludes today's presentation. I'm going to go through the questions. There's quite a few of them here, and hopefully get through everything as we go through this. So someone asked, should we use DRT? I think I've explained that. I really think DRT, you need to do that first and then go back to the schools. The schools at some point in time, you could invert that and put in an estimate, but I think the schools are going to be a little leery, personally, this is my personal opinion, with not having the DRT flag on because they know there's been changes. What I think they will actually have you do is go back and submit it as a DRT, and once you've appealed it and explain your situation, then they'll go in and make the adjustment. That got into, we talked about that briefly throughout the problem, is that the corrections or adjustments have to be made by the school and not the parents. Again, this gets into the timing changes that happened in prior years versus this year. You would have submitted something maybe that was more representative of your situation. That will change because the school is going to have to make that change or adjustment for DRT. Just ask the questions. We are submitting a FAFSA using DRT. We're going to do adjustments. Should we say we're going to amend FAFSA submission? Again, the school will have to make the adjustments, not the parents. So you probably have seen this from various people. When you go in and you submit your FAFSA form and then you do DRT and there is a professional judgment made, typically you'll get an email, depending on who's who registered the FAFSA form, that email that's used, you'll get where the school has made an adjustment once they go through verification. So this way, the same thing will happen. You'll turn DRT on the front end. You'll submit your appeal or explain your situation of where the change needs to be made, and then the schools will go in and make an adjustment for just their case. And this will create some of the inconsistencies. It will not go globally across the system. It will be just specifically that school's adjustment. Someone's asking, if high-net individuals do not have FAFSAs, can you send a letter to the school? You're done already. I guess you could. You could probably submit a school. So if they don't want to submit the FAFSA form, I'm really trying to get everyone to submit. We just wrote I thought, a very good article last week regarding why you'd want to submit your FAFSA form. It just does a few different things, especially if you're looking at proper debt structures. We just had a client recently that had over $250,000 saved for college and didn't have a state school on the list. And when we got to saying, envision your child's life at age 25 and properly utilizing those funds, they could graduate debt-free at 25 and go to grad school if they want, their mix of schools was the right one, or spend it all in undergrad and then have $150,000 worth of debt at grad school. So again, that's a personal decision. We're just trying to point out the situations where that may be applicable or not. With changes to FAFSA, there are differences between FAFSA and CSS working together. So with the CSS profile, if someone's asking that link and how that works, both of them will use prior, so that's a consistency. Once you, again, appealing that situation, the appeal letter will apply to both the CSS profile and prior on the federal side, so that will be consistent. So I don't think there'll be an issue there. Personally, the schools that are using the CSS profile have their own methodology, so they're making their own adjustments anyway to the numbers. It's really for the federal programs that you would qualify for where that documentation becomes much more important for the school as you go through this process. Let's see any more questions here. Someone asked, what is MELT? MELT is when people commit to a school and then they decide not to go because they've decided to go to another school. So what we can see or we're envisioning is that some parents will apply, especially your state schools, because it helps with your housing, that they'll commit because the commitment is fairly small, $200 or $300, $400 to submit to say, save me a seat at your school, and that just guarantees you, priority in as far as housing. And then what happens is you don't attend or you end up not going. What I can envision, because we're going to have this more lengthy time and award letters coming in and maybe negotiations, because this process becomes much longer, that gap where in prior years we really just had about a month to make our decision. Now, you may have various situations where it's going to go on. The school may be, award people more money later on because they have to get the seats filled, and that may change people's view. This year, as letters get deployed, you may get award letter in November, December, January, and then you get other awards in March that may be more attractive. And now you've committed to one school, that that would be a loss of the deposit. So that's where melt will become an issue, and it'll be interesting to see how the schools react to that in the next year or two. I would see maybe deposits going up as a possibility of that commitment or that change. Again, they're just things that I'm speculating, but it is an issue for the schools. And now with this length of time, it will become much more difficult for the schools to manage that going forward. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you all for looking at a few different speaking engagements we have coming up. You may want to look into. Again, we're doing a demo of the EST Plus system on Thursday, so you can sign up for that. If you need that, please send me an email. The registration, it was in the recent newsletter. And also, we're doing something for the Pennsylvania 529 plan tomorrow at 12 o'clock. So that's going to go through the pain and how to use 529 plans the best way. So if you're interested in that, it is through the Pennsylvania Guaranteed Savings Program. I'm not exactly sure. We did have listed in the newsletter, but the registration is on their website. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today, and have a great day. Talk to you soon.